Okay, so this is a sample of how to create a basic flap pocket for a jacket or something. Okay, so just marking through where my pocket is going to be. I've drawn 3 lines, which is actually the middle line that I'm using. So that's just to mark my pocket opening. If you want to tack it, tailor's tack, mark tack, flat tack, whatever you want to call it, or draw a line, it's entirely up to you. And then I'm going to place the pocket flap. So the pocket flap is top fabric cut into the shape with lining on the back, and I've also used a bit of Stay Flex on the back of the fabric just to make it a bit stronger. And you might want to top stitch it as well if you want to. If you want to top stitch, do it now before you attach it to the coat. And if you want to also, you can just machine across the top to hold the top 2 pieces together if you want to. And when you sew the pocket lining to the top fabric, you kind of want to make it so that it sits back on itself slightly, just so that it's not going to sit. What you don't want is for the lining to come forward like that, basically. So I've then trimmed the corner, trimmed the curve, trimmed the corner, and turned it through. So then I'm going to lay it with the right side on the right side of my front of my jacket, and you probably won't be able to see this, but that's the hem is down here and the neckline is there. You can just see the armhole over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew it on so that eventually it'll go down like that, and then underneath there'll be a pocket opening. Okay, so I'm just going to put that on there again, and I'm just going to pin it in place. And then what I've also got ready are, for this one pocket, I've got 2 pieces of pocket bag lining, which I'm just using a cotton silesia. You can do it in a cream if you want to, but I usually just use the same colour fabric. And what we're going to do as well is we're going to sew a piece of the brown wool to, so I'll cut 2 of those, and they're going to be sewn to one of the pocket bags. I'll only need one for this pocket. I'm going to cut use one of them to use as a facing on the back, okay, which I'll explain in a moment. So that piece and one of my pocket bags I'm just going to put out of the way for the minute, and then the other pocket bag lining I'm going to line up and do it right sides to right sides. If you've got a right and wrong side, and you can see I've just got some chalk on that side, so I know that's my wrong side. So I'm going to lay that to match up with the pocket flap, and then I'm going to machine. Make sure you reverse at each end, and I'm going to machine. I'm using the width of the machine's foot, and I'm just going to sew the pocket flap onto the jacket, and it is literally just from the edge of the pocket flap to the edge of the pocket flap. And then I'm going to match that, so I'm just going to use this pin just so that I know where the end is. Again, if you want to do a tacking line, please do, and the one at this end actually sitting in the right place anyway. So I'm then going to machine the pocket bag to the front of the jacket, again using approximately the foot's width. So for my machine it's about 1/4 of an inch. And what we want to do, I've gone a little bit too far here, what you want to do is just make sure that you don't go any further than the opening of your, or the end of your pocket flap. So because I went over, I'm just going to start again over there. Make sure you reverse at each end. Do you want it to be a strong stitch? There we go. And if it's a little bit shy of the end, so there I've gone in a bit, that's okay, because it just means that your pocket bag opening will be slightly angled, and that's actually a good thing because then you haven't got a chance of seeing any lining. So take all these pins out now, like that, and then we're going to cut through. So don't start at the end, you're going to start about 3/4 of an inch in, 1/2 an inch to 3/4 of an inch, and you're just going to cut through. And I'm cutting the jacket. Okay, you need some sharp scissors or snips to do this. So I'm cutting in between these 2 things, so in between the flap and in between the pocket bag, and I'm just cutting the coat, and then just angle that up to meet the end of my stitching. Okay, so I've not done the pocket flap, I've just gone up next to it, and I've not cut the pocket bag, but I've gone up next to it. Okay, so it's trying to meet that last point of stitching, which is why you need some sharp scissors or snips to do that. Okay, and then the next step, you've got two choices here. You can either press it all up, and what I'm going to do is machine just through the lining and this seam allowance so that it pulls the lining round, or if you want to, you can turn it all the way through, get it to lay nice and flat, give it a press, roll it ever so slightly so that the lining is sitting just inside, give it a press, and then flip it back to the right side, and then you can top stitch that if you want to. Okay, I'm going to do it so that the lining is going to go, so there's no top stitching showing on the outside of the jacket basically. So I'm just going to machine through. You need to make sure everything's nice and flat, and I'm just going to machine the lining and the seam allowance, and it's just less than the foot's width, just there, and then that will help when I press it. That'll help bring it round to that side like that. Okay, I'm just going to put a couple of pins in it just to hold it in place for the moment, and then there's your top flap like that. But I expect you're saying yes, but there's no pocket. There's a big hole, but there's no pocket. So we get our other piece of pocket bag, and we get our piece of wool, and all we're going to do with this, now it was an off cut, so it wasn't a, I've not cut it perfectly, so it's slightly off at the top there, which is fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn that over so I haven't got a raw edge. You can overlock if you want to, but I prefer it not to have a raw edge. And I'm just going to machine that on very close to the edge as well. So I don't know if you can see that, it's just right on the edge there. And this is just going to create a facing so that if you lift the pocket flap up, you don't see pocket bag lining, you see brown wool in this case. So that will sit like that basically. Okay, so what we need to do is just line it up, make sure it all sits nice and flat. So push the top of the pocket flat, make sure it's all the way through the opening, so the seam allowance sits up there. Make sure that the pocket bag that is attached is laying nice and flat. Make sure your ears, what I call the ears, the little diamond bits, the triangle bits that stick out, make sure they're pushed out to the side. And then you're going to lay this over the top. And what you need to do, it doesn't matter if it depends how you've cut it. I've literally cut them the same size. All you need to do is make sure that that bit of wool covers this area here. Okay, so if it sits slightly higher, that's fine because you can cut it off. But what you don't want to happen is you do that, and then you'd end up with lining showing here. Okay, so I'm going to place it, and also if you try and match the bottom of your pocket bag the way that I've cut it, you try and do that, it doesn't cover the hole at all. Okay, an alternative way of doing it is rather than laying the wool on top of the lining fabric, you could attach it to the top if you want to. So there's no one way of doing this. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it up so that I know that it's covering the pocket opening, which is also known as the pocket mouth. I'm going to try and match up the sides of my pocket so that I know that it's nice and straight. And then I'm going to pin it and pin it across the top here. And then I'm just going to pin it in the middle. And then I'm going to turn it over and just check that everything's laying where it's supposed to. Tuck those little bits back in again in a minute. But as you can see, if I open that up, I've got wool there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that back, and then I'm going to, first thing I do is going to put just a couple of stitches through, so go forward and reverse a few times just to catch that little diamond back so it's out of the way. I always call it diamond, but it's actually only a triangle. Anyway, and then I'm going to machine down here and then flip up just to see where the bottom of the shorter pocket is, and then machine across and then up the other side. So machine down, and then, oops, oh yeah, I pinned it in place and so it won't flip so easily. So make sure it's all nice and flat. Machine across, and then machine up this side. And then I'm going to do the same as I did on that side and just machine across that little diamond or triangle. Okay. And then I'm just going to go around the pocket bag because this is a jacket pocket, and I don't know about you, but whenever I put my hands in my jacket pocket over and over again, I end up with a hole in it. So I like to try and double stitch them if I can, just to make sure that it gives it a little bit of extra strength. Okay, so now in theory, let's just take those pins out from that side. What you can do as well if you want to is just trim that off, but flip it back over this side and we have an opening. However, we also have a big hole up there as well, so we just need to rectify that, and probably got holes at the side as well. Although those little diamonds are held back, you still need to machine down the side. So the last step, and you need to try and keep the flap where it's supposed to be. The last step is to machine. If you've top stitched this, then you can continue that line of stitching and then come across and top stitch up here as well if you want to. However, I haven't got that top stitching, so I'm just going to go up this side here just to make sure that that's held in place. And then I'm going to actually stitch in the ditch, which means that I'm stitching in that fold there, and hopefully it won't be seen too much. And then I'm going to come down this side. If I had top stitching that I was meeting, to continue the feature, I would still stitch in the ditch, but then I would also machine across here as well. Okay, so let me just show you what I'm going to do on this one, and I may do another. I think I'm going to make another one of these jackets, so I'll show you the other way on the other jacket. So as I'm doing this, I'm just pulling that apart to try and make sure that I get that stitching in that ditch rather than on it. And then I'm coming down the side. Okay, and that now we have a secure top, a little bit of lining showing there, but that's okay. I can press that, take those pins out. That's how it should look on the other side, and it's all enclosed. If you want to, you can trim across there, and then you have beautifully finished pocket bag and flat pocket. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, please subscribe to my channel, Costume Making with Mrs. B. And if you liked it, then I'd appreciate a little thumbs up. Thank you. Bye.